Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about PwC's revenue. They just released their revenue earlier this week, and they reported global revenue of $43 billion, and this compares to $42.448 billion in the prior year. And this represents only about 1.4% growth, which is not that much, but it's kind of what we all expect due to COVID-19. And this is especially not what we expected when compared to 7 and 12% growth numbers of the big four firms that we had been speaking about earlier in Australia. However, PwC states that during the first 9 months of the fiscal year 20, they had about 7% growth. And you have to remember that PwC's fiscal year ends in June each year. And they said that revenues were down from April to June by 6%. Now let's go over the lines of service. Assurance grew by 1.3% to $17.6 billion this year in revenue. And Assurance now has 119,000 professionals. Their tax line of service grew by only 0.5% to $10.7 billion. And there are now 55,000 people in PwC Tax, which is the largest tax practice in the world. And the advisory business grew by 2.2% to $14.7 billion. And advisory has 71,000 employees now. Now let's go over the regions a little bit since we've been speaking about Australia earlier this week. As far as regions go, the Middle East and Africa for PwC did the best, with 6.9% growth. And shockingly, Australia and the Pacific region was the worst performing region for PwC. They saw a 6.8% decline in revenue in Australia. And this is pretty astonishing when compared to E&Y and KPMG numbers we spoke about over the past few days. You have to remember that E&Y had $2.1 billion in revenue in Australia and KPMG had $1.9 billion. PwC only had $1.766 billion in Australia. That's a significant gap for PwC, and they should probably focus on strengthening their Australia presence. And there's other regions too that didn't do well. Mainly Europe didn't do well. And shockingly, Asia did well for PwC, but I'm not sure how much we can trust these numbers. The release, this is the smallest, weakest release I've ever seen PwC release. They normally have these huge blowups they put together, and I'm sure that's coming. I think this might just be a press release right now, and they might be doing the bigger one. But normally when they do the initial press release, it's better than this. It's kind of shocking. It seems that since they had a down year, they don't want to make a big thing about it like they normally do, But I think there's another one coming because they normally do a bunch of stuff about diversity and also the amount of volunteer hours they perform during the year. So I think they'll be releasing another thing. And another important thing that PwC spoke about here was jobs. They stated that they had let some people go around the world, mainly in advisory, but they hope that this does not continue in the future. Now let's get to some comments that were made by Bob Moritz. And yet Bob Moritz is the global chairman of PwC. Bob Moritz said, first and foremost, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a human tragedy that has deeply affected the lives of many people around the world, including members of our PwC family, their relatives, and friends, and our heartfelt condolences go out to all those who have lost loved ones. Since the pandemic struck, our priorities have been safety and well-being of our people, protecting and preserving jobs, and helping our clients and the communities in which we live and work and deal with the impact of COVID-19. And Bob Moritz went on to say, I am proud of what we have done over the last year and the way our people have adapted quickly to a huge amount of change, while at the same time continuing to connect, collaborate, and innovate for the benefit of our stakeholders across the world. While the last few months have been very challenging for everyone, we have refocused our business to help our clients manage the immediate impacts of the pandemic and reinvent their business for future success. It has never been more important to provide our stakeholders with high-quality services. We have also continued our significant investments in technology and upskilling our people to help build a sustainable PwC for the future.
Our investment in technology was born out at the height of the lockdown when 95% of our 284,000 strong workforce were operating out of the office with no interruption to service we were able to provide. And again, he talks about priorities there, but he has like 10 things he lists off, so it seems like they need to do a little bit more prioritizing. But overall, this wasn't as bad as it could have been. Up 1% is still better than being down, but this doesn't capture the complete pandemic because it's still going on. So make sure you follow this podcast. We're going to do some more analysis of this in later podcasts. So to get that, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description to this. If you can, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you can't, like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube. Thanks for listening.